privileged classical music above all else. I crossed over, embracing not only jazz, but rhythm and blues, gospel, world music, and even cheesy pop tunes from the 1950s, which I not so secretly adore. As I transformed myself into a jazz and pop music historian, I stretched myself intellectually, exploring the fields of gender, race, and cultural studies that this new direction involved. It all began with Sarah Vaughan. Her singing was a passport of sorts that opened up my world. Time and again, Vaughan fans have told me that she was also their entry point into jazz. And as I've studied Vaughan, coming to understand the scope of her talent and legacy, it has become clear that over the course of her 47-year career, she brought countless listeners to the world of jazz. Her singing changed the outlooks of musicians, critics, disc jockeys, and run-of-the-mill fans. When she first burst onto the scene in the 1940s, she left her fellow musicians, especially vocalists, gasping in amazement at her daring innovations and vocal dexterity. It had not occurred to them that the human voice could be used this way. In the 1950s, as she found success as a pop artist crooning ballads, many white Americans heard her for the first time. They were intrigued and explored her jazz singing. Decades later, when she began performing with symphony orchestras, she introduced another new audience, this time classical music lovers, to the wonders of her voice and jazz. She was their crossover moment, too. Sarah Vaughan was a jazz singer par excellence. During her lifetime, she epitomized everything that jazz singing stood for, and in the decades since her death in 1990, she has often been mentioned alongside Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday as one of the best jazz singers of all time. Vaughan would have been flattered by the praise and happy that her legacy endured, but she would have been dissatisfied with its specificity. As she evolved as a musician, she increasingly rejected the label jazz singer. She found it too confining, too narrow a description of what she did and how she thought about music. "I'm not a jazz singer, I'm a singer," she insisted during an interview with the jazz publication Downbeat in 1982, reiterating a stance she first took in 1960. "I don't know why people call me a jazz singer, though I guess people associate me with jazz because I was raised in it from way back. I'm not putting jazz down, but I'm not a jazz singer. Betty Bebop Carter is a jazz singer because that's all she does. I've even been called a blues singer. I've recorded all kinds of music, but to them, I'm either a jazz singer or a blues singer." She definitely did not consider herself a blues singer, though she often infused her singing with the blues. "What I want to do, music-wise," she concluded, "is all kinds of music that I like, and I like all kinds of music." Vaughan did not want to be categorized, pigeonholed, or contained, as a musician or as a woman. "Music has too many labels," she told critic Max Jones in 1981, revisiting a familiar theme. "I call it all just music, and I hate being labeled." This rejection of labels, paired with her faith in music, defined her worldview. As a young black girl growing up in segregated Newark, and then as a black woman traveling an often intolerant world, Vaughan understood the power of labels and stereotypes. She understood their ability to strip her of her individuality and humanity, to define and limit her, and ultimately to dictate how she should sing. Because musical labels describing genres and styles are often linked in the public's imagination to the racial identity of the performer, she realized that these labels influenced how an audience would interpret and perceive her singing. Vaughan and her contemporaries also understood that labels reflected the larger power of dynamics of society as a whole. As music historian Guthrie Ramsey Jr. plainly explains, the act of categorizing tells us who's in charge and running the show. And Sarah Vaughan always wanted to run her own show. She wanted to sing her own way, constantly pushing back against the record executives, concert promoters, and club owners who tried to change her. She spent her entire career defying expectations, forging her own path so that her creative vision and voice could be heard. Vaughan didn't want to be known exclusively as a jazz singer or a blues, gospel, pop, or even opera singer either, though she had the versatility and talent to fit into any of these niches. nor did she want to be known simply.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.